you. And hello to all the Pathfinders from the UK and around the world. I want to thank the British Union Conference for going ahead and sponsoring all these wonderful awards and honors. It has been a great help, I know, to many Pathfinders worldwide. And we enjoy seeing all of these awards and honors always. And also being able to learn maybe some of the things that we wouldn't have been able to learn in our local clubs. So Pathfinders, we're going to start our Sabbath off with an honor that you might have never heard of, and it is called the Coqui. And you can see here my little patch up there. That is the patch for the Coqui. And as you notice, it looks like a small little frog, and that's because it is. Now, this honor is not a worldwide honor. It's not even a North American division honor. It is an honor from where I come from, and that is Puerto Rico, a small little island. And as you can see, I'm here in my home, right in front of a waterfall in the jungle, looking for this small little frog. No, of course not. That's not true. It's just a nice little background that I was able to find. But this is a picture or a video of a waterfall in Puerto Rico where the Coqui is found. So I will go ahead and start presenting, and we can go ahead and get to know a little bit more about this wonderful little guy. Okay, let me know if you can see that. Can I get a verbal confirmation that it's presenting well?
So far, it's just you, Mr. Jasil.
It's just
still
me?
Seeing you.
Oh, you know why? Because I forgot to share my screen. That's why.
That would make a difference.
Presented without doing that. All right. It would make a difference. Okay.
And again, Pathfinders, your worksheets are available from British Union Conference website. Here we go. I think we're ready to go and get those worksheets filled out and learn a lot about a really cool little frog. Here you go, Mr. Jasil.
All right, wonderful. You can see that now?
We can.
Okay. So this is the Coqui honor. And if you notice the spelling, it's probably not what you're used to. C-O-Q-U-I. And if you notice on the I, there's a little mark that's a little slanted. That's called an accent mark. And in Spanish, that simply means that's where you put the emphasis. Kind of like on my last name. I also have one there. It's a little accent mark on the second A. It just means that's where you emphasize it. My last name is Pagan. So that's how you notice what that means. And you'll see that little accent mark on the Coqui, because if it didn't have it, it would just say Coqui. That's not the right way to pronounce it. So Coqui is this little frog, and like as I mentioned, it comes from the Puerto Rican Union. Now, the Coqui has a lot of interesting things, but we're going to be listening to a lot of sounds that this little guy makes. So I want to make sure that everyone has their speakers working well. And make sure that you have them to a good and adjustable volume, and make sure that you can hear well also. Now, where in the world is Puerto Rico, where the Coqui comes from? I put here a little map so you guys can see. This is my small little island. And you can see that's a blown up version. And this is the smaller version right here. That is Puerto Rico, right there in the Caribbean Sea. So you have the Atlantic Ocean, and it comes into the Caribbean Sea, and that's all this area here. And that's Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, and this is the flag of Puerto Rico. It's got one star, which signifies the island. It has a blue triangle, which signifies the sea, so the island in the middle of the sea, and 5 stripes that alternate red and white. It looks very similar to the United States flag, just kind of like a condensed version. And if you didn't know, Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States. So if you step foot on Puerto Rico, you are stepping foot in the United States. The same laws apply. We have the same governance structure, the same president, and all Puerto Ricans are US citizens. So as soon as you come to the mainland, this is the United States here, the main states. As soon as a Puerto Rican steps foot there, we are allowed to vote. We are allowed to have all the residence privileges as any other citizen in the US. In Puerto Rico, however, the primary language is not English. It is Spanish. I grew up speaking Spanish, and everyone there on the island speaks Spanish as well, because Puerto Rico used to be a colony from Spain. But we have been US citizens since 1917. So once Puerto Rico went over to the US from Spain, there were a lot of things that transitioned to English, but we still keep our culture and we keep our language still, which is Spanish. Hence why Coqui is spelled that way. It's the Spanish spelling. And here you'll see this little symbol throughout my entire presentation. That little symbol is the symbol for the indigenous people that were called Taino. They lived in Puerto Rico before the Spaniards came. The Taino people used to draw a lot of different symbols about the world around them. And this was the symbol for the Coqui, for the little frog. So whenever you see this little symbol, you'll know it means Coqui, and it comes from the Taino people, the indigenous people of the island of Puerto Rico. And Pathfinders is a worldwide ministry, as you already know. And these are the specific Pathfinders that are found on the island of Puerto Rico. Here you have the patch, and is the Puerto Rican Union patch, which goes right on your left sleeve. Many of you have the patch for your conference. I have the patch for my conference, but this is the patch for the Puerto Rican conference. And it says Unión Puertorriqueña, which translates to Puerto Rican Union. So the entire island is just one union, like the British Union Conference. And you can see that the Pathfinder uniform in Puerto Rico, it's a little bit different than probably what you're used to seeing around the world or there in the UK. You can see that the Pathfinder uniform doesn't have the khaki shirt or blouse like we do. It's white. And this is because Puerto Rico belongs to the Inter-American Division. And that includes a lot of Spanish-speaking countries like Mexico, Guatemala, most of Central America, and most of the Caribbean islands. Their uniform is different because they use a white blouse or shirt, and many times they use khaki pants or skirts, as you can see there in the picture. So this honor, Coqui, was created there in the Puerto Rican Union for the Pathfinders of Puerto Rico. But the Puerto Rican Union has been gracious enough to want to share what they know about our little frog and want to share it with the world. So Pathfinders, you there in the UK and wherever else you're also listening in, you will have the chance to learn about this honor and the Coqui. Excuse me. And another thing also that the Inter-American Division, where Puerto Rico is part of, requires on their uniform is a flag on your sash. So I have here my sash, and you can see I keep there the Puerto Rican flag. And I do that just because it reminds people of where I'm from, and I'm proud to say I'm Puerto Rican, but I'm also proud to say that I live in the US and I'm a part of the North American Division. But it just speaks to where I come from and what my journey has been. Now, the Coqui is a very, very small little frog. You can see there the comparison to a pencil and a coin there. That coin is the 10-cent coin in the US. It's called a dime. Excuse me. And it's 10 cents, but it is the smallest coin in US currency. You can see there how small the Coqui is. There's the tip of a pencil, and there is the 10-cent dime, and you can see two full-grown Coquis right by it. Coquis come in many different species. Here's two of them, and that's how small they are. This other coin is also in the US. It is just 1 cent. It's called a penny, very similar to the pence. And you can see another Coqui, just how small it is. It fits almost on the penny. And if you want to see just how small these little creatures can come, here is that same penny with a baby Coqui on top of that penny. So when Coquis come out, they come out really small, and then they grow, but not too much because they stay small. Now the Coqui is nocturnal. Like many frogs and many toads, they come out at night and they sleep during the day. But the Coqui comes out at night. And so when you want to go looking for a Coqui, if you're in Puerto Rico, you got to start looking at night. Make sure you have a flashlight and you'll be able to find them. If you look during the day, they're sleeping and they usually hide to make sure that they don't get eaten or anything like that. So if you have your worksheet for the Coqui, we're going to go ahead and start through the questions. I will go ahead and provide as many answers as I can, and you can fill it out as we go. The first question is, to what class does the Coqui belong? Now, when I say, or when I ask class, I'm not talking about like a school class or a Pathfinder class. Is the Coqui maybe in companion class? No, we're asking what scientific class. Now, scientists, they use different orders, or they have come up with a system to name all the animals and put them in different categories. And we want to know what class the Coqui belongs to. And you can see here a list of the different things that the Coqui belongs to. The first is the kingdom. It belongs to the Animalia class, which is where all the animals fit in. It's not a plant, which would be a different kingdom. And the phylum is Chordata, but the class that the Coqui belongs to is Amphibia, which is the amphibian class. So the first answer, the Coqui belongs to the Amphibia class. Now the word amphibian, it comes from the ancient Greek, that term, and you can see it there written out in Greek, which spells amphibios. And it's a combination of two Greek words. The first one, amphi, it means both or two kinds of life. And the second part, bios, means life. So amphi means two or both, and bios means life. So amphibios or amphibian means both kinds of life. Now, if you've heard bio before, maybe you've taken a biology class. Biology is the study of life because it comes from the same root word in Greek. So amphibios, amphibians, both kinds of life, which means that we take it to mean that they can exist where? In land and also in water. And that's the main trait of amphibians, that they can exist or live in both water and land. So the second question is, this class is divided into 3 orders. And those 3 orders are Apoda, Caudata, and Anura. Now the Coqui belongs to that last one, the Anura order. But what other members also belong to this order? So we know that the class is amphibians. Right below that, the order for the Coqui is the Anura order. But there are some other creatures as well that God has created that we as people have put in this category of Anura. Let's go through the first 2 that are not for the Coqui. Apoda. Now this means lacking limbs or feet. So you have certain types of amphibians like the Caecilia, which belongs in the Apoda order. They look kind of like worms and they don't have any feet. So this is the Apoda order, but it's not what the Coqui belongs to. The second one that we talked about was Caudata, and that means with a tail. And this order includes what you see there, a salamander. It can include newts. All of these are amphibians, but caudatas are the ones that have tails. Now, the third order is anura, which means without tail, like the frog or the toad. So what other members belong to the order anura, just like the Coqui? All frogs and all toads. Now, if you can think of any specific species of frogs or toads, you can also include those because those also belong to that order, like the cane toad. The cane toad is very famous in Australia because it has become a plague there. It has overrun a lot of its vegetation and is really difficult to get rid of. Now, there's also an honor called amphibian's honor. Maybe many of you have taken it, maybe you haven't, but this honor goes a lot more into detail about this class, about amphibians. And you learn about all these things that we've said about newts, salamanders, toads, frogs, and those other ones without limbs like the Caecilia. So I encourage you, if you don't have the amphibians honor, and after this, see if you can go ahead and get it. And the amphibians also has an advanced level. So number 3, what member of this class is mentioned in the Bible? Do you remember what class the Coqui belongs to? Belongs to the amphibia class. So what members of amphibians, or the amphibia class, can we find in the Bible? Does anyone know? Let's go ahead and hear some answers. What class is mentioned in the Bible of amphibians? You can feel free to write it in the chat. And if Mark can help me out and see if we have any answers.
Somebody said frogs and toads in Moses' story. That's
All
Curtis.
Right.
Curtis mentions Moses.
All right, very good. Yes. So frogs are actually mentioned in the Bible. Frogs belong to the class of amphibians. And more famously, just like Curtis had told us, as one of the 10 plagues against the Egyptians. And this is found in Exodus chapter 8. And if you have your Bibles, your physical Bible, or if you have an application for the Bible, I encourage you, invite you also to open up to Exodus chapter 8. We're going to read the first 4 verses, and you can follow along. I will go ahead and show it up here. So I'm reading Exodus chapter 8, the first 4 verses, and this is from the New King James Version, which is the official version of all Pathfinder Bibles. And it says, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, go to Pharaoh and say to him, thus says the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all your territory with frogs. So the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into your house, into your bedroom, on your bed, into the houses of your servants, on your people, into your ovens, and into your netting bowls. And the frogs shall come up on you, on your people, and on all your servants." Now, none of us were alive during Moses' time, and when Moses was trying to get Pharaoh to let go of the Israelite people. But one of the plagues was frogs. Now, when I was a kid, I used to play a lot, and I would play by a river, and I would see lots of frogs. Can you imagine, though, having hundreds of frogs everywhere that you go? And not only outside, inside. The warning to Pharaoh was, it will be in your bed. It will be in your room, in your oven. Can you imagine trying to go to sleep and you have 10 frogs sharing the bed with you? No, I would not be comfortable with that. But that was one of the plagues. Frogs are mentioned in other places in the Bible besides Exodus. And we can also go to Psalms, chapter 105, verse 30. It tells us, their land abounded with frogs, even in the chambers of their kings. Now, Psalms is a wonderful book. and it has a lot of chapters. You can see this one is chapter 105. But it's also mentioned there in Psalms, frogs. So frogs have been around for a very long time, but they're included in the Bible. And just one more text that I want to give you guys that mentions frogs, and this is the last book in the Bible. It's one of my favorite books. And if you know your books, you know that we're going to go to Revelation. We'll go to chapter 16 and verse 13. And this is John, the Revelator, talking about what he saw. And this verse tells us, and I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. So the Bible mentions frogs plenty of times as the plague. It mentions it in the book of poetry, like the Psalms and the Songs, and it also mentions it in prophecy. John says that he saw spirits that looked kind of like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. So this class, amphibia, is mentioned throughout the Bible, and the Coqui belongs to this class of amphibians. Number 4, ask us, give the general traits of this class. We're talking about the amphibian class. Well, they are cold-blooded, which means that their blood, the temperature, they cannot regulate it, which means if it's cold outside, their blood will also be cold. If it's hot outside, their blood will also be warm. Now, we as creatures created by God, we need our blood warm to be able to move around. If you put amphibians, which are cold-blooded, into cold weather, they have difficulty moving around and they can't move as much and they have to stay still. That's why you see snakes, crocodiles, and all types of reptiles, which are cold-blooded. They like to sit in the sun because that helps them move around. Amphibians also, their skin is not covered with anything. We as people or animals that can be considered like mammals or birds, we have covering on our skin. We have hair. Lots of animals have fur. Birds have feathers. Amphibian skin isn't covered with anything. They're soft and they're moist, kind of like squishy. Of course, except the Sicilian, which we had saw before, it's got small little scales, but most amphibians are soft and moist. And the young generally undergo metamorphosis from larva with gills to an adult air-breathing form with lungs. What this means is that when they hatch, they start out in the water. And if we think of frogs or toads, what is that little creature known as when it goes swimming? As the tadpole. We call them tadpoles. But when they grow up, they slowly turn into frogs or toads, and they can live outside of the water. So all amphibians go through the stage where they start in the water, and as they grow, they live on land. And also amphibians can use their skin as a secondary respiratory surface. So they can not only breathe from their nostrils, like we can, but they can use their skin also to breathe. I think that's pretty cool. Number 5, what characteristics distinguish the Coqui from the rest of amphibians? So while the Coqui is an amphibian, it's got certain things that not all amphibians have. And I want to share with some of those some of those characteristics with you. The first one is the absence of an interdigital membrane, which simply means they're not adapted to swimming. So here on the left, you can see the foot of a frog, another type of amphibian, and you can see in the middle, it has like webbing or a membrane around it. This helps that frog to swim. But on the right here is a foot of a Coqui. It's missing that webbing. And here's a picture. Here on the left is a swimming frog. You can see that it has that webbing or that membrane in the middle. And here's the Coqui. It doesn't have anything like that in its foot. But we as humans, sometimes we can look at our hands And it looks kind of like we have a little membrane or a little webbing there. You know, it doesn't go all the way to the tip, but some of us have a little bit, some of us have a little bit more. I don't know if God created us that way so that we can also swim, but the coqui does not have this in its toes. That makes it different from other amphibians. Now, the last toe in the foot of the coqui ends in a T shape. So you can see here, this is the bone structure. And this last toe here is perpendicular to the first toe. So it kind of looks like a T or the letter T. That makes it a little different from other amphibians. And one of my favorite characteristics that makes it different is it has terrestrial reproduction and direct development, which means they don't have a tadpole stage. They hatch from their eggs as fully formed little frogs. Do you remember that first picture that I showed you with the little coqui on the penny? That's how small they come out. And you can see here that there's the little eggs. They lay their eggs on land, not in the water. And there is a coqui that is protecting its eggs. Now, is this the mother coqui? No, it's not. This is the father coqui. In the coqui world, the mother lays the eggs and the father takes care of the eggs and protects them. It's a little different from what we're used to. And I have here a video that I want to share with you guys. These are coqui hatching. Remember, they don't have tadpole stages. They come out as small little frogs. There's no sound. It's just for you to watch. So check it out, how they hatch as small little coqui. Oh, there popped one out. Look how small that little guy is. They're coming out as fully formed little frogs, not as tadpoles. That's how small they are. And they come out pretty dark, kind of black. So the coqui lays lots of eggs, so to try to get as many of the coqui babies to survive. So the coqui has no tadpole stage and hatches like a small little frog. Number 6, why is the coqui called the coqui? It's such a strange little name, right? You have swimming frogs, you have toads, but why is this one called coqui? Well, it's very simple, actually. The species is named for the loud call that the male makes at night. So when you hear the coqui, it makes a sound that sounds exactly like coqui. You guys want to hear what it sounds like? Let's go ahead and listen to it. So remember, only the male makes this sound. I'm just going to go ahead and press play. If it's too loud, adjust your speakers. If it's too soft, also adjust your speakers. And this is the sound that the coqui makes. So you can hear it. It sounds kind of like a whistle. It says coqui, coqui. And this is what Puerto Ricans hear every single night all over the island. Maybe in the UK or wherever you are in the world, you have crickets that you hear at night. We have crickets too, but we hear more the coqui because it's a lot louder. And this is wherever you go on the island, all night, you will hear the coqui. Maybe some of you aren't used to that, so it might be a little annoying. For me, I grew up with that. And I hear that and I know it's time to sleep. It's nighttime. So it's called coqui because it makes that sound, the male. Now the coqui, besides coqui, also makes other types of noises. So number 7 asks, what other sound, song, or call besides coqui does the coqui make? And I have a few examples here for you to listen to. Here we have the red-eyed coqui, which makes a distinct sound also. Do you know why it's called the red-eyed coqui? Probably because its eyes are red. In Spanish, this coqui is called coqui churi because it makes a sound very similar to churi. So let's listen. Besides Coqui, it also makes this sound. So it says churi, or kind of. It's called automatically. So we named this one because of what it sounds like, the red-eyed coqui. We also have the grass coqui, which is known in Spanish as coqui de las hierbas, which makes kind of a tick-tick sound. Let's listen. So it was pretty high pitched and you had a lot of coqui around it singing, but it made that little tick-tick sound. It's another type of sound that the coqui, this one, the grass coqui, can make. This coqui is known as Eneiras coqui, and it makes different types of clicking sounds as well. Let's listen. It kind of reminds me of my mother or my teacher telling me tisk tisk, no, no, no. But that's what the Eneiras coqui also can make that sound. There's a coqui called the whistling coqui. What type of sound do you think it makes? In Spanish, it's called coqui pitito, which means little coqui that makes a whistle. And let's listen to it. It sounds exactly like it's trying to whistle. That's not me. That is the coqui making its whistling sound. Hence why it's called the whistling coqui. Now the bronze coqui also has the name Richmond's coqui, makes little chipping sounds. So kind of like a chip sound that the bronze coqui can make. And the golden coqui makes a tweet tweet sound, kind of like a bird. It sounds a little bit like that. But that's not a frog. I'm sorry, that's not a bird. That's a small little frog making that sound, kind of like a tweet sound. So all coqui make the sound coqui, but they also have all these various distinctions and sounds. Let's go on to number 8, which says, what is the purpose of the song of the coqui? So the coqui sings coqui, but remember, only the male sings coqui. Why does it do that? Well, actually, it serves two purposes. The first part, which goes ko, serves to repel other males and establish its territory. So when it first says it's ko, it's telling other coqui, I'm here, this is my space, you can't come here. And the second part, ki, is to attract the female. So it'll say ko, this is my territory, and then ki, to attract the female. So Pathfinder boys, if you want to attract a nice young lady, maybe if you go around singing ki, ki, you never know. Maybe it won't work for Pathfinder girls, but you might have some coquis that follow you around. Number 9, what is the genus of the species of the Puerto Rican coqui? We're going to give the name of 5 species and show some pictures of them. Now, if you remember the scientific namings that we have the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, and the last one before species is the genus. And this long word there is the genus of the coqui. I'm going to try and pronounce it. I haven't heard anyone pronounce it, so I don't know exactly what the correct way is, but this is my attempt. It is Eleutherodactylus. If you have a different pronunciation, or if you know how to pronounce it correctly, I am all ears. Eleutherodactylus. But now,
Eleutherodactylus.
Very good.
There you go. Got somebody saying it.
All right. Now, this name for the genus comes from the Greek words again, which means free toad. Because remember, there's no webbing in between the toes of the coqui. And there's lots of species that belong to this specific genus. I'm going to give you 5 different examples. The first one is the red-eyed coqui, which we heard also makes that churi sound, coqui churi. It belongs to this genus, Eleutherodactylus. We have the dwarf coqui, and you can see it there. In Spanish, it's called coqui enano, which means the same thing, dwarf coqui. The spotted chirping frog. This is not a coqui. It's a different type of frog, but it belongs to the same genus, which means it's free-toed. It has no webbing on its feet. So it has just fingers or toes like that, which belongs to the same genus. Remember, this genus means free-toed. So all the frogs that belong to this genus don't have webbing in their feet. Just like the Monte Iberia dwarf frog. This is not a coqui either, but it belongs to this genus as well. And this last one, the Lesser Antillean whistling frog, also not a coqui, but you can see there, it has no webbing, which makes it belong to this genus, Eleutherodactylus. Now, number 10, in what other countries outside of Puerto Rico is the coqui found? Now, growing up, I was always told the coqui is only Puerto Rican. It's only found in Puerto Rico. So with great pride, I would tell people, the coqui is as much Puerto Rican as I am. Come to find out, you can also find the coqui in different parts of the world, mostly surrounding the Caribbean Sea. So the coqui is also found in Colombia. And this is the country of Colombia here. That's its flag. It's not all over Colombia, but in certain parts of it, you can find a coqui. Also in the biggest island in the Caribbean, Cuba, you can find some coqui there as well. Here's Puerto Rico, and here is Cuba. So it's not too far off. In the country of Guatemala, right here, this small little country right below Mexico, you can find some coqui there as well. On the island of Dominican Republic, you can also find a coqui. The island of the Dominican Republic is right by Puerto Rico. So that's probably why there's a few there as well. And also in UK territories, such as the Virgin Islands, you can find the coqui. Here's a square that zooms in. This is Puerto Rico right here. There's the UK Virgin Islands, very close to Puerto Rico, which is probably why you can also find the coqui there. So there's a few other places in the world that you can also find the coqui. However, only the coqui in Puerto Rico actually makes the sound coqui. And so the coqui is found in these other countries, but they probably don't call them coqui. They probably have different names for them. But only the ones in Puerto Rico can make that coqui sound. Now let's go over a few things about different types of coqui. Which coqui is the largest coqui? That happens to be the web-footed coqui, which has a maximum of about 8 centimeters, or in inches, that's a little over 3 inches. Now, what's interesting about the web-footed coqui is that besides being the biggest one, it also has webs in its fingers. Remember we said coquis don't have that one? None of them do except the web-footed coqui, which is why we call it web-footed coqui. So this is the largest one. Well, which is the smallest one then? We know which one the largest one is. The smallest one is called the plains coqui. And here's a comparison of a full-grown adult right by a dime. Remember, this is the smallest coin in the US. And they get to about 14.7 millimeters, or just barely over half an inch. Which coqui sings coqui? You would assume probably all of them, and many of them do. Here's just an example of how many of them actually sing coqui. You have the common coqui. You also have the Puerto Rican rock frog, which in Spanish we call it coqui guajon. You have the mountain coqui and the melodious coqui. Now, the song of the melodious coqui, it's a beautiful melody. And I didn't bring over a sound bite for it, just because I wasn't able to. But if you go online later on and you look for melodious coqui, it sounds like it's singing a song, which is why we call it melodious coqui. Which coqui has a song similar to the sound of a water drop? Now, there's a certain type of coqui that when it sings, it kind of sounds like water dropping into a bucket. And this one is called the Mona coqui. Let's listen to a little bit and see if you can make out how it kind of sounds like a water drop. Oops. So it's kind of like a little water drop. And this is the Mona coqui, which makes that sound. Which coqui has a song similar to the sound of winding a watch or passing fingernails through the teeth of a comb? So if you have a comb, or if you ever combed your hair, you know, if you pass your finger through it, it makes kind of a krrrk sound. There's a coqui that kind of makes that sound, and it's known as the dwarf coqui. Let's listen. So it's kind of like winding a watch or running your fingernail through a comb. That's the dwarf coqui. Now, which coqui has a color considered black or dark marble? Well, it's actually one that we've seen before, the web-footed coqui. You can see it's kind of black there. It's got a kind of like a marble type of skin. So the web-footed coqui is known for being the biggest one, and also considered like a dark marble type of color. Which one has the highest frequency of vocalization? In other words, which one has a high pitch? And that would be the plains coqui. Why do you think it has such a high pitch? Because you remember, it's also the smallest coqui out of all of them. Let's listen. Now that little click, it sounds to us kind of like a click, but it's probably because it's so high pitched that our ears can probably not hear it too well. But that is the plains coqui, which has the highest frequency. Number 12, in what part of the world is the coqui considered a plague, and how did it arrive there? Now, the coqui, like I said before, in Puerto Rico is beloved. But in this certain part of the world, it's considered a plague or a pestilence. And that is on the islands of Hawaii. Now, here is Puerto Rico, all the way on this side of the continent. And if we cross the continent of America all the way to the Pacific Ocean, we have the islands of Hawaii. And the coqui somehow got there, and the Hawaiians don't like it. Now, I used to live in California, which is right here, the west coast of the United States. And I met some Hawaiians one time, and I was talking to them about the beloved coqui and how Puerto Ricans love the coqui. And my Hawaiian friends said, I know what you're talking about. And we hate those little frogs. I said, how can you hate the coqui? I love it. But for them, it's a pestilence because it's not natural to Hawaii. So how did it get to Hawaii? Well, they were brought over on boats that were unloading plants, ornamental plants from Puerto Rico. So the coqui, as you can see, a lot of the pictures, they hang around in the plants, in the leaves. And so when some Puerto Ricans wanted to take their flowers and their plants to Hawaii, they brought over the coqui as well. And Hawaii is a tropical island, just like Puerto Rico. So the coqui is able to flourish and able to live there, no problem. So it's a plague on the islands of Hawaii. So what's the name of an extinct coqui? Unfortunately, there's been quite a few coqui that have gone extinct. I'm going to share with you 3 of them. The web-footed coqui, the one that we said is the biggest one, we haven't seen it in decades. The golden coqui, which has got a nice gold shine to it, extinct. And Eneida's coqui is also considered extinct. We haven't seen these species in the island of Puerto Rico in many, many years, and it's believed that they've gone extinct. So why should the Puerto Rican coqui be protected? I'm going to give you 5 reasons. The first reason is it is aesthetic. That red word there says aesthetic. So what that means is beautiful. Its habitats where the coqui lives makes up an incalculable and valuable resource and provides beauty to the island. And this is an actual picture of a waterfall there in the tropical rainforest. So the island of Puerto Rico is beautiful, and that's where the coqui lives. We should preserve the coqui simply because we also want to preserve where it lives. Economical. That means having to do with money. The coqui brings tourism over to the island of Puerto Rico. Lots of people want to go to Puerto Rico and want to see and hear the coqui. And when they come to Puerto Rico, they have to buy a room to stay in a hotel. They have to rent a car. They have to pay a tour guide if they want to go and see the coqui. They have to pay for food. And all of that helps stimulate the Puerto Rican economy. So we want to preserve the coqui simply because it also helps the economy in Puerto Rico. It's ethical. What that means is that it's a good thing to do. We as humans are responsible for making the coqui endangered. God told us, I give you dominion over all the earth. That doesn't mean that we can now just rule and do whatever we want. We are stewards of this world, and we have to take care of what God has made for us. And that includes the coqui. We have to take care of the coqui. So it's ethical to try and preserve the coqui. Ecological. The coqui is an important predator to lots of nocturnal plays. And you can see there a small little coqui eating a termite. The coqui takes care of a lot of bugs, a lot of insects, and without it, the island would be overrun with all types of bugs and insects. So that's another reason to preserve it. And the last reason, it's cultural. Inside and outside of Puerto Rico, the coqui is a symbol of Puerto Rican culture and its people. There's a saying in Puerto Rico. It says in Spanish like this. If someone asks you, where are you from? You can say, yo soy de aquí como el coqui. What that translates to is, I'm from here, just like the coqui. So the coqui is embedded into Puerto Rican culture. It's embedded into our people. And whenever you see the coqui, it's a sign directly of Puerto Rico. Another reason to conserve the Puerto Rican coqui. Number 15, what can we do or what can be done to conserve then the coqui? There's 5 things that we can do. And most of it pertains to where the coqui lives. We can halt deforestation. What that means is we got to stop cutting down the trees in the tropical rainforest of Puerto Rico, destroying the home of the coqui. We can conserve the rainforest, which means we can take care of it and make sure that everything is going well, preserve the ecology and structure of the rainforest. We can develop educational environment programs. We can teach others how to take care of the environment. And if they take care of the environment in Puerto Rico, they'll also take care of the coqui. We can reduce pollution in the air, in the water, and the ground, which doesn't destroy then the rainforest, which in turn also doesn't destroy the coqui. And we can also help fund research related to the coqui. What that means is that we want to know a little bit more about the coqui. We want to learn all about its different sounds. And for research, they need sometimes money to be able to do these things. So we can help with whatever money we can give them as well. So just to let you know, the Coqui honor also does have an advanced level, which we're not going to get through today, but maybe in some near future, we can also learn that advanced level. But if you get the patch for the Coqui from the basic level, and then you do the advanced level later, you can get that little star and you put it on that patch, which means you have the basic and the advanced level. And I just want to go ahead and give you guys this here, a little website. It is Coqui, PR for Puerto Rico.com. Now that website is in Spanish, but you can use an online translator, probably like Google, or you can learn Spanish, which would be even better. But you can go to that website and it's only about the coqui. You can listen to all the different recordings and the sounds that the different coqui can make. So those are all the requirements for the coqui, this little frog that is endemic to Puerto Rico, where I was born. And I want to give you guys thanks for letting me, allowing me to share a little bit of where I come from and also sharing this coqui honor with you guys. I hope, Pathfinders, that you thoroughly enjoyed it and learned a little bit more about this little tiny creature of God.